Yes, my dudes, I'm Alex, and thanks for checking out yet another beat breakdown. And today, we're going to be rolling around these toms, man, because we're going to be playing Christian Scott, K.K.P.D. It stands for Ku Klux Police Department. And if you want to hear a little bit of the backstory as to why this tune was written, if you listen to the album introducing Christian Scott, you can hear Christian Scott explaining the whole story that led to him writing this track. So the drums on this track are pretty in your face, they're pretty full on, and they're so sick, man. So Christian Scott's had a few different drummers play for him. I know that Corey Fonville plays for him, who plays also in a band called Butcher Brown, and also Jamire Williams. So I'm not sure if there's been a few other drummers as well, there probably has. But in this video, we're going to be listening to Jamire Williams ripping it up on the kit. So let's have a listen. This was definitely a tune that smacked me in the face when I first heard it, and you can see why. So killer groove, mate, and loads going on, loads to mess about with. So K.K.P.D is 114 BPM, it's in 4/4 time, and we get a lot of tom action in there. So jump onto your kit, make sure to grab a PDF by following the link below, and let's get straight into it. So quick disclaimer before we dive in there, this track is definitely heavily improvised, and if you go and check out a few different live versions, as well as the album version, you'll notice that it's played slightly differently every time. So what I've done is I've notated the groove, and we can almost use that as like our framework, and from there we can adapt it and start to experiment, start to improvise around that. So the first thing we're going to do is a lot of this groove is based around a particular sticking, and there's too many notes in there to call them out individually. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you the sticking with my right hand on the hats, my left hand on the snare, so you can hear it nice and clear. So just follow along on the notation and see if you can have a play along at home. So we've got our sticking down, and what we need to do now is add some dynamics. So when we start to orchestrate this around the toms in a minute, you can adapt this slightly and kind of change it up depending on your playing style and what you like the sound of, what you like the feel of. But something really important is that we want to play an accent in the left hand on 2 and 4 on the snare drum, giving us a backbeat. So let's just check that out. So now it's starting to sound a bit more like a groove. So the next step is to start to move our sticking around the toms. And like I mentioned before, we can adapt this quite a lot. So the way that I've kind of been thinking of it is half a bar on the high tom, half a bar on the floor tom. But if you listen to the track, this does change quite a lot. So you can improvise quite a lot with this. And if you noticed in the video we looked at with Jamire Williams, he's actually playing a second snare drum instead of a high tom, tuned up nice and high with the snare wires off. So anything goes really, see what you can come up with, have a little mess around with it, but let's have a listen to how it's going to sound. So playing it like that just transforms the groove. Instantly, we're starting to sound a lot more like the track. So the next thing that we're going to incorporate is to step our hi-hat on eighth notes. Now this would work equally well if you played the hi-hat foot on quarters or off beats, but for today we're going to go with eighths. So let's add that into the mix, have a listen to how it sounds. So it just adds an extra element in there to step our hi-hat on the eighth notes. So our left foot is taken care of, our hands are taken care of. So let's see if we can add in our bass drum. In all honesty, it's quite difficult to hear exactly where the bass drums are placed in the track. And I would imagine that again, there's quite a lot of improvisation and you can play this quite freely. So I quite like the sound of playing my bass drum on beat 1 of the first bar and the and of 1 in the second bar. I feel like it fits quite nicely with the groove, and also it's quite nice to get a little bit of low end in there. So let's give it a go on the kit, but of course see what you can come up with, see if you like the sound of something slightly different. So something else that we can start to experiment with is playing an open hi-hat with our left stick. So the most common placement for these seems to be on the last 16th note or the of beat 4 of the bar, or the second 16th note or the E of beat 3 of the bar. So what you want to do is just bring your left hand over and hit your hi-hat, and you're just going to catch that stepped hi-hat on the way up. So let's have a quick listen to that. And again, if you like the sound of a different placement, give that a go as well. So the final step, and something that happens quite a lot in the album version of the track anyway, is we're just going to turn the high tom that we play on the last 16th note of beat 2 of the bar from a 16th note into 2 32nd notes. Now, you could play this as a left-hand double stroke, but I prefer to play it as singles, so just right-left. Just because of everything else that I'm playing in the groove, for me it just feels a little bit more natural. So it just adds a little extra element in there, and it definitely sounds pretty serious. So let's give that a go. Nice work, my dudes. So in a second, I'll play us out with a bit of the track, and I won't necessarily play note for note, but more kind of explore some of the concepts that we've looked at today and try and lock in with the general vibe of the track. So if you liked the video today, be sure to let me know in the comments, and I hope to see you in the next beat breakdown. But for now, let's see if we can play Christian Scott, K.K.P.D.